Thank you so much, Hutton, for being here. I am excited, really excited that we finally got to make this happen. Do you want to start by taking like 30 seconds to tell us a little bit about yourself and exactly what you do?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Steve. So my name's Hutton Henry. I run a couple of companies, but the main one I work for investors assessing technology, but it lets me also assess people. That's my big thing. So I assess teams for them and help them make investment decisions.
Why are you so interested? Like super passionate. You could like see it written all over your face
Yeah.
as you talk about it. And when it comes to assessing people.
I think, to be honest, like most things are always around a failure, aren't they? And like many, many years ago, I had this big project that failed, and I sort of, even though I'm a techie, I was always interested on the technology impact on people and what happens there, really. So.
And do you think it's because of something that like happened previously in your life, or like what like kindled this desire, this passion within you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm quite outgoing, and I've got a very quick mind, I guess. But the key thing was really that in terms of business, it was definitely around a project failure. In terms of my own upbringing, unfortunately I was orphaned as a kid and went into care, and lots of things happened. So I was always quite interested in seeing people and seeing things from a different perspective, really.
From a young age?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
How did that show up as a young kid?
It's a really good question. I think really like things like school was a prison for me. It's like, doing things in a very factual, methodical way. And I'm super creative. I didn't know, I mean, for a very long time, I used to code and I didn't realize that super intense sort of focus. And, which is a very common thing with people with this sort of mindset. And so for a very long time, things seemed quite easy. But then when I started to run a business, I started to see lots of gaps because my mind just moves into lots of new idea, innovation, and we like to say in my team, 100 good ideas and well, 100 ideas and five good ones. Really, it's like a machine that comes up with so many different things. So I need help, right? I need people to look at things and orchestrate them in a very understandable way, but also a very scaling way. And I get to see that in companies as well.
Cool. That's super cool. I love the like the human part of it, of like really understanding who people are, people's strengths, weaknesses, how you like what fits with what and what do we need all together to actually be able to make this happen. I'm curious, what sort of assessments does your firm use?
That's the thing. I mean, you mentioned the strengths piece. So the last 10 years or so, I became really interested in these assessments because I'm sure you feel the same when you first do them. You're like, wow, some of them really look like you. And you're like, I really want to learn a lot. But the other thing is they're like Bibles. They're so big and they're too much to read. And over time, I ended up learning to become a Kolbe consultant. So it's a company based in Arizona. They've been around for 40 years. And they're a really good assessment because they pretty much show your strengths and they're looking for a particular type of strength, which is your cognitive drive, which only kicks in during creativity and through stressful moments. So I like to say that I can assess how people sort of react under stress, really.
So was there other assessments or other ways you've approached it before you've become certified by Colby? Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Do you use them much or like DISC and Myers-Briggs and all those type of things? Well, I used all of those, but they're quite personality driven and personality assessments, they change depending on context and how you're thinking. So they're really good to understand your personality, but what's really good to understand is how that can be augmented by your natural instinct and drive. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I like that you said that. Because like you said, in different situations we behave differently, but actually our personalities actually can change. And I think that there's something about those tests. They're super fun. We love to do them. And it's a really great way to like understand us, but it's in a certain way limiting because like we could really um we can change and literally you could do like people years later will have different results. So let's get into a little bit of the Colby. Do you want to explain to it us a little bit about it for people who don't know anything about it? And then we're going to get into how it relates to people with ADHD.
Yeah, yeah, sure, absolutely. So, effectively, as I say, really, it's about we have three parts of the mind. So, the one part which we all know is your cognitive side of your mind, where the logical side, and really that your CV represents that. Then the second part of our mind is the affective, your personality, and assessments like Strengths Finder, um, Myers-Briggs, DISCs, all these very popular tests. They are the ones that assess your personality. But this third cog is your cognitive side of your mind, and your cognitive side is really your natural instinct, what you're going to do under pressure. And what I find amazing is this is fully formed by the age of 6 and it doesn't change at all, right? And so compared to personality, which obviously changes under context, as you mentioned, like this piece has been there for a long time. And if you're lucky, you can uncover what your strengths are and then really architect your life around what is you. So, and it really works on a 4 numbering system. And I guess just doing it off the top of my head is, you're looking for this spectrum of people who can be predominantly fact finders, people who follow systems, people who are, which is where a lot of ADHD people can sit in, and then the last one is the people who are hands-on who make things. And what we've been, because I'm qualified and trained by Kathy Kolbe and the team, one of the things is this sort of fine line between being an innovative entrepreneur versus being sort of categorized as ADHD. There is a fine line, and I know that in training the Colby team said, well, yeah, it's good to get assessed because you can, there's some nuances to it. And I was sort of mentioning before that one of the big things, especially when you come into the workplace and the business, if you have that type of profile, what you end up doing is you could be misunderstood. That lady isn't really very methodical. They don't do this, they don't do that. But what they do is create really great ideas and innovate and come up with new, fantastical things often that need to be brought back down to earth. And what I am trained to do is really find when we find an entrepreneur like that in particular, is to help them create a sandbox in their business, like a testing area, like a play area, if you like. So they might create something that's going to work, but don't change it too much. Make it grow, but on the side, give them a pet project, something that they can keep bringing in new ideas, but they're not going to break the main company, if that makes sense. So what's underpinning that is too much innovation, too many quick ideas can destabilize everyone in the team.
Yeah.
So does that resonate with you or?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I always say, I come in and work with the cognitive side of things, right? So I find
Yeah.
this super interesting. And I always say you want to work with your brain, not against your brain. And that's a really good example of where you're working with your personality, or it's not personality, it's
Your cognitives, yeah, yeah.
cognitive, yeah. And it's like working with yourself and creating something, not like trying to change yourself, but doesn't mean you have to like everyone else has to suffer because of it. Doesn't mean you have to lose tons of money. And if you do it correctly and you have this place of like where you could actually let yourself out in a healthy way, then I'm sure sometimes some amazing ideas come out of it because sometimes it just falls and it's fine. But sometimes it's like, hey, we could actually fully implement this now in the business and we'll do some really good things.
Yeah, I think it's really, you're right. You have to work within your brain. And if you take those 4 different types of cognitive actions, you really need the spectrum of like the 4 types of people in your collective team to really accelerate. Because too much of one thing is is not enough. We have to have some moderation, and we need people to really counter how we think and to challenge us to make the best of the ideas, for example. I mean, one of my personal examples was that in the old days, like, I'd come up with this great idea and we'd go on this brand new crusade. And I think it's very common for business owners in particular to go for shiny new things. And then they do it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they don't continue it, and it was probably a really great idea, but they didn't do it consistently because they got excited about something new. So instead of making that a weakness, it's like, well, we need to embrace, their ability to see something maybe someone else wouldn't have thought of. Not all the time, but just some new idea. But then be open to bring someone else with a different mindset or cognitive way to then help support. You need you need that balance, right? And I don't think any of us can do it that well, on our own. So.
Yeah, because well, speaking of which, do we is everybody has a little bit of each of them, no?
Yes, they do. Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so do you want to just go through all the four types and give a little bit explanation so people can just do like a basic, not real assessment, but just like a basic understanding of it. And then I want to go a little bit deeper where you said the differences and where that fine line is
Yeah.
for people with ADHD. So what
Sure.
are those for?
Okay, so the four is the fact finder. So somebody if someone is a high initiating fact finder, they cannot start anything until they've absorbed every bit of information that they can. And the way that they work with time is they always have to think about the past before they build the future. They
Mm,
integrate the two. Then the second type is is a follow through, and it's a term that's quite hard to understand because most people think that means follow through means finishing something, but what it really means is the need for a system. So if I meet somebody who's a high initiating follow through, they will not start something until they've created a system. And an example of that will be a PA I met once. And before she would write an email, she would write out the whole email as a system on a textbook before she'd write it out. Um, which is, to me, an awful lot of work, but to her, it's completely common sense to her that I will not do something until my system's in place. The third type is a quick start, and they're the people who think about the future and innovation and taking risk. So they tend to ad lib. I see most entrepreneurs of them in this, and it's just about future and new ideas. The last one is the implementer, and they're people who like to make things and like to get hands-on. So you can tell them quite well. If I meet somebody with that skill, they tend to be really into making models. If they were talking with you, they would be chatting with you and they move the salt and pepper pot in a way. Everything has to be modeled for them, in the physical world. So they're the four main types. And as you quite rightly say, it's that every one of us has an element of these in us, but we have one that's prominent. In terms of the ADHD thing, it's interesting because I do meet people with ADHD, and some suspect it, and some have been diagnosed with it. And so when we take the look at their profile, what we're really trying to understand is, well, whether you've been labeled or not, where's your strengths? What can we do with that? And one of the things that I do like with the Kolbe assessment is really this diversity of thought. So it's nothing to do with diversity of gender, ethnicity, age, location, whatever. This is purely diversity of brains and how we react to a problem, right? So so what we would do specifically with people for ADHD is sort of say, well, you know what? Forget the label. Let's just see the strengths and understand you're going to optimize yourself. What's the best thing for you to be doing that really aligns for your strengths? And to be honest, is something that your audience can do themselves. And it's the first question I ask everyone is, if I gave you a really important project or creative endeavor, what are the first 3 to 4 things you'll do? And like just be honest and list them in a way. And often they map what the person puts down maps to the 4 different types in the right order most of the time. Um, and and that will give your audience and people with this, an indication of where to go. Of course, these are just tools and they are things to get things on the table, to get discussing, to make things better. But you know, I don't know if you see that, but you can, with these assessments, you can do like you do 50 people at once, and
Yeah.
then you can start to move them together. So so it isn't just about an individual, it's about how a whole team works as well.
Yeah, because it's taking every person's strengths and using them all together. I love that. I love that so much. Um, how do you know if, like you, first of all, like disclaimer to this question, I don't like the term ADHD.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Right. So like once my clients come into my world, we don't talk about it anymore. It's like
Okay.
out the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but have you seen any specific like patterns or specific um like recommendations that you have for people who, yeah, fall into those like ADHD-ish tendencies of things that they should do to really work on their strengths?
Well, I think possibly the most common symptom is inability to maximize, to scale something. So maybe scale the business or scale your personal income because of the changing of ideas. So the symptom is the outcome is the feeling that they're not getting as much as they would like is probably the main reason. But underneath it is a lot of changing of ideas. And I like for me, I like you, I don't really like that term as well, because a label can be a deficiency when really it's a superpower. What do we do with that? Right? What do we Okay, fine, that's who you are. So how are you going to maximize something? And maybe you're not going to follow the traditional thing of spending ages finding research. You're just going to go, and ad lib something and be ad hoc. So their their main thing really is to find the right type of work which uses their creativity in the best way. So that's where, we were talking earlier around the personality. That's where the personality and the cognitive come together, because it's
Mm.
not purely your sort of reactive ways. It's really what desires in your personality do you have? Do you want to change the world? Do you want to create the best art in the world? Do you want to help people? That so it's a mixture of the two skills, which is why I think that it's never good to do one assessment. You need to combine them to get a full feeling of what people could be doing.
Yeah, so on that note, where does the cognition part of that come in? Is that also related?
Yes, it is. So we have to take all three, but generally in my work, personally, I don't do too much of that, because really people have done some of that because they've either studied or they want to get somewhere. So they've driven the cognitive side very hard, because that's the acceptable part of the world where you make money, right? Or you become something. It's that's there's no it's interesting because you'll be gravitating to something naturally, maybe be a lawyer or whatever it's going to be, and you'll spend your years studying to that. And I think that the education system supports the cognitive side very, very well. But with the personality side and the cognitive side, those two can't exist without the third, right? So they all intercombine really and
Yeah.
interrelate.
Well, as someone who does spend all the time in the cognition,
Yeah,
I'll disagree with the education. I
yeah, yeah.
think that like they teach us information, they don't actually teach us how to use our brains.
Oh,
But
I
I
see.
most definitely
Okay.
say they
Yeah.
compared to the other two groups, they like forget about those other two groups, the personality and the cognitive completely. Like it's
No,
just like a thing of
no,
the
it's good.
past,
It's
all right?
good to disagree. I think. I mean, I would agree with you that, yeah. So they might have over-indexed on information. That's possibly what I was saying. But it's to think for yourself is a really important thing as well.
Yeah,
So
amazing. As quickly, what would you say is like in a short answer, because I know it could be very long. You said that everybody develops it by the age of 6. They have already like it's set in place. What what like leads to that? What causes that?
I knew again to ask that, but I'm I think it's just so many inputs. It's the nature nurture thing. I think
Hmm.
also we all know we're born with certain things straight away, right? So I'll keep it short like that. What we're born with, nature and nurture.
Okay, before we get to our final question, where can people connect with you, learn more about you, and yeah, and just learn more about your awesome work?
Yeah, thanks, Esty. It's literally, it would be great to connect with people and discuss things. So a link tree, is simply my name, Hutton Henry is one word. So linktree.com, huttonhenry.com. It should work.
Amazing. So the link to that will be right here below for everyone to grab that. But what one last question that I ask everyone, and
Yeah.
what is something controversial that you believe in?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good one. The customer's never always right, is my first.
Mm, why are you saying that?
Because it puts you in a really subservient place where you don't think for yourself, right? So, just because that's a rule, I mean, it's sort of you need to be a peer, and if you want to help your customer or fellow students, whoever, you need to think for yourself.
Hmm. I feel like there's like a story behind that.
Not particularly. It was just the
Okay,
first thing that came to mind.
good.
So
It's a great one. I agree with you on it. Um, I think we do have to serve our customers, and I think that customers have to be priority and center of the business, but I don't think that that customers are always right. So thank you so much, Utin. This was amazing. I really appreciate you taking the time here to be here with us today.
yeah, it's really good to connect. Thank you for your time.